peppers, peppers, and more peppers. And as you can see, lots of peppers here. Let's talk about peppers. Hey guys, welcome to the Pantry Living Kitchen. And I do have to say, this is the, I think, 5th or 6th time now that I have started this video. All right, so in typical Stephanie, Chris, Pantry Living, Hickory Croft, whatever fashion you want to call it, Alex and James, we are so behind on this video. It just keeps going and going and going. All right, guys, so in my absence from YouTube for the last month, we still filmed a lot of footage. We harvested. You just saw that wonderful harvest that we did. I know we didn't kind of share all of it because it was whirlwind and we filmed when we could. So it's all over the place. But what we are addressing here is that harvest that you saw us bring in. We had tons of tomatoes, we had tons of peppers, eggplants, all those sorts of things. Time has passed and we've done bits and bobs, and I've filmed bits and bobs, but I haven't had a chance to put it all together in a video form. But I'm going to show you just how many tomatoes we managed to get out of the garden, as well as a few other things. What we have most here is bags going into the freezer for sauces later. You all know how much I love to freeze everything so that I can get that extra liquid out, and that is the key here. So what we haven't seen yet is whether I can find freezer space. So stay tuned, because we're sure going to be having a freezer challenge video to get some of this stuff eaten up, because there's still a ton of stuff out there that we've got covered that has to still come in. And those lima beans, look at that. I don't know how much is in here. We're probably going to get about 4 or 5 meals. That's going to be great. We bag them up in those little individual bags and freeze them. I think it works perfect. And the other thing we have, which you can kind of see behind me here as I slip to the side, is 20 pounds of tomatoes ready for some lemon basil with lamb meat soup. We all love that, and it was a hit, and it's already disappearing. So we're going to get some more of that on the shelf. And also behind me is the tomatoes that didn't make it into the bags yet because they were still slightly green. And at this very moment, James is out there picking another bucket of tomatoes for me because, like I said, frost is coming, and the tomatoes are the one thing I said this year I'm not covering. And now we're left with peppers. Peppers, peppers, and more peppers. And as you can see, lots of peppers here. Let's talk about peppers. Mostly what we're going to be talking about is making some, quote, jalapeno pickled peppers, because we're using these sliced up pickled peppers so much. They're so great on just a slice of cheese. They're great when we make our cloud bread and have burgers. We put them on top. There's so many uses for these peppers. And we've already gone through 4 jars now. I know I said 3 in the last video. Now we're up to 4 jars used up. We find, bear with me, one of these little jars, to be honest, when we pull it out for all 4 of us, it's gone, which is really nice because that means it doesn't sit in the fridge for ages and end up wasted. So I have a mixture of jars ready to go into the oven. First step we're going to do, well, actually, I guess it won't be the first step. I was going to say put these in, but realistically, first step is cutting up a whole lot of peppers. So it may seem like I'm cutting a whole lot of these little, I don't know, slivers of peppers, but bear in mind, I am hoping to fill 31 cups worth of jars, I guess you could say, with peppers. So I need a whole lot of these peppers in order to make it go the distance. I'm betting I'm going to be cutting up this whole bowl. So as you can probably see here, I already have all my peppers sliced up and cut. We did that last night. So they're ready to go this morning because, boy, it was a lot of peppers, but I have big plans to make a huge batch of these. I believe I'm going to try in my, you can see it sitting on the table here, my pressure canner. I'm going to try to double stack. I'm going to do my 9 pint jars on the bottom and 13 1-cup jars on the top level. So that's 22 jars in total, 31 cups of sliced peppers. So hopefully I've done enough because it was long-winded. I need a little like chopper thingy-mabobber. But anyways, what we're going to be using is out of my small batch preserving book. We're going to be using the pickled jalapeno peppers recipe, except for, since I don't have jalapeno peppers, we're using our sweet red peppers, and I'm going to put some of our hot little Aurora peppers that we dried from last year in there. Now, you've seen this recipe already. We've done it, and we only put 1 of those Aurora hot peppers in there. And since then, we have eaten 4 jars of the, I believe we made 13, might have been 11, but I think it was 13. Anyways, I'm not going to go back and check that. They're disappearing quickly. That's the moral of this. And what I want to do is I want them a little spicier because they just weren't, just not enough kick. And I know they haven't sat for a super long period of time, but these aren't going to last long because everybody loves them on everything. There's just so many uses for these, and I think they've now become my favorite way to use peppers, besides obviously in the freezer, which works for just about everything. So let's get started on this. What we're going to need: apple cider vinegar, honey, pickling salt, and garlic. I actually had to make a quick run out to the barn to get the garlic because we're so far behind on the chores around here at Hickory Croft that the garlic is still hanging in the loft of the barn. We really need to get that harvested and brought in because it is time to actually replant. So hopefully we get that done in time. We're good at growing garlic late in the year. So one thing I like to do with this recipe is put it all into the jars except for my brine, just pour it on top. So I like to put my pickling spices. That's the other thing I didn't say because I forgot to get it out yet, is the pickling spice also has to go in this. Another starving cat. Oh gosh. You want to be on here too? This one is licorice. She actually just wants to go outside. Give me one sec. So I like to pack my jars with everything first, then just pour the hot brine over top. So what we need to do first is get these into the oven, 225, get them sterilized so that we can get them out and get them filled with all their goodies. And hopefully we'll have enough peppers chopped up. So because I want to put a clove of garlic in each one of these jars, what I'm going to do is put a big clove in the pint jars and a small clove into the littler jars. I think it'll work out just fine. So now I need to peel 22 cloves of garlic. So that's the next step. All right, so you can see here on the counter, we've got our garlic all ready, and our Aurora hot peppers are sorted out into clusters to what I think should go into each jar. And now we just need to get the jars out, start packing, and make our brine. So in typical Stephanie fashion, as I'm sure you've gathered, I'm working in a big batch here. But I'm going to give you the recipe right now, quick rundown of just a single batch of this brine, which does basically two 250 ml jars. You need 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, a 1/4 cup of water, and 4 teaspoons of honey. So we are obviously multiplying that because I did 31 250 mils of hopefully peppers. That's what I sterilized for jars. Now I'm not sure if we'll fill them all, but I hit a snag. In this pot is all the apple cider vinegar I have in the house, and I only got 12 cups. So I can only make brine for a 12 times batch. So hopefully that will work for what we have jars. I don't know if it will. You'll just have to stay to the end and see what happens. We might not get as many done as I'd hoped. But my apple cider vinegar is in the pot, and now we're going to add that water. We're going to need 3 cups of water, and then I'm basically operating on the 4 teaspoons. I'm doing it times by 12 is 48 teaspoons. Divide that by 3. I know this is all complicated. Divide that by 3 to get our tablespoon. So 48 divided by 3 is 16. And then 16 tablespoons is 3/4 of a cup of honey. Does that make sense? I think it's right because 4 tablespoons should be a 1/4 cup. Yeah, we're going to go with it. I'm putting 3/4 of a cup of honey in here. I never said math was my strong suit. All right, so I just took my jars out of the oven. They are still hot. I prefer to pack them when the jars are hot. So what we're going to do is a 1/2 teaspoon of pickling spice on the bottom, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1 clove of garlic, and those Aurora peppers. And then we're going to stuff it with all of our red peppers sliced up. And then I'm going to do another 1/2 teaspoon of the pickling spice on top, and then pour the brine on and seal it up. We're going to leave a 1/2 inch head space, and then it's going to be into the, well, it's my pressure canner, but I'm using it as a water bath canner. Okay, so we interrupt our broadcasting for a light bulb moment by me. I didn't even think about the fact that I'm using bigger jars. So I actually need, for the large jars, to do a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a full teaspoon of the pickling spice. So I'm going to put in, same method, salt on the bottom and 1/2 of the pickling spice, but it'll be a whole teaspoon and then a whole teaspoon on top. And then the other jars will use the lesser amount. So the reason I'm doing all the bigger jars first is because that is what's going to work on the bottom of my pressure canner in order to stack these. All right, so we have our jars filled. You'll see there, I've got them filled to that 1 inch from the top kind of thing. You can push them down in there, get them as packed as you want, but it really doesn't matter. You can see the steam coming up from my brine. It is getting to a good rolling boil, which is what you want. But back to these. Push them down as hard as you can in there. As soon as you pour that brine on, the one thing I did find was they all float to the top. It doesn't matter. Still leave that 1/4 inch headspace with the liquid. And I found after they finished water bath canning and I put them into storage, they settled right down into the liquid just fine. So I'm not too worried about that. Going to get the brine poured over these. I've got all 9 of my large jars filled. Then we're going to put them in the canner, and then we're going to do the small ones so that we can stack them on top. So let's get busy. Now the one thing I like to do is just use a chopstick and kind of push it down in there, just in case you've got any air pockets. You can see that's all coming up now, but it's all right. It will work out in the end. But you can see by doing that, I now need to put a little bit more liquid in. So we'll just top that up just a smidgen. There we go. All right, so we have all of our small jars now ready for the brine. The brine is boiling, but you can see I cut out way more peppers than I needed, so I guess we're gonna have to get creative and come up with something else for those for supper tonight. It may be time to try a viewer suggestion. All right, so we got all of our jars into the canner, all 13 of the single 250 ml and 9 of the pint. And I had a spare pint jar and I might have enough brine. So I'm going to just make one up, fill it right to the top and put it in the fridge and let it marinate in there. I'm not gonna can it, but worst case scenario, if I don't have enough brine, I'm just gonna put a little white wine vinegar in there. I think it'll work just fine. But that used a few more of my peppers at least. Now we're going to wait and see how these do. I've never tried to stack water bath can in my pressure canner, and believe me, it is almost to the top. So we'll see how this goes. Perfect fill for our spare jar in the fridge. All right, so while those are in the canner behind me, hopefully it works well. We're gonna get some of these chopped up and just put into the freezer. Very uneventful. You've seen us do this numerous times this year, but I don't want these to go to waste. They will get used up. The nice thing is I can use them in cooking recipes and canning recipes right out of the freezer. So the more I have in there, the more I can get done and keep trying new things throughout the winter months. So I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but I'll come back at the end and tell you how many of these bags I managed to put in the freezer and what we've got left. Well, guys, it is getting late in the day. It is still the same day though. I'm still in the same outfit. So at least I managed to achieve something from start to finish today. We made all those jars. You can see them here, all of them sealed. And I got an extra one to go into the fridge of those jalapeno sliced peppers. And 4 bags, each of them 2.5 pounds of chopped up peppers to go into the freezer to add to our growing collection of peppers in the freezer. We are so set this year. We won't need to buy peppers or anything. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But I still have a problem. Take a look at how many peppers are still on this table. It is crazy. And I have a bucket of chopped up ones in the fridge for quick use. So I'm still going strong with peppers, but not for today. I'm done for today. So to wrap up this dealing with the harvest video, I'm going to talk for a moment about the peppers. That is something that Chris and I at Hickory Croft have really been striving to become independent on and do well with growing peppers. And this year we planted 60 pepper plants, and as you can see, peppers galore. So I do feel we have finally reached our goal. And maybe next year we'll grow a few less peppers, but I doubt it. So stay tuned. We're going to keep going with peppers, and we got a lot of other stuff to come.